Well, hi everybody, I'm Bill Whittle and welcome to The Firewall. I think that the fundamental divide between liberal and conservative philosophy and policy comes down to how people feel about wealth. Not money, money's just a unit of exchange. I'm talking about wealth, having more than you need to survive. Now, it seems that most modern liberals believe that wealth is essentially limited. They see the multimillionaire with the Learjet, the big car, and the 3 or 4 big houses as a villain because if wealth is more or less fixed, if there's a giant but limited pot of money out there somewhere, then the fact that he has more means that someone else has less. His wealth has to be the result of stealing from the poor. But we conservatives see wealth very differently. We believe that wealth can be created from thin air, that people can, through creativity, invention, and hard work, physically create new wealth essentially out of nothing. For us, the rich man with the car, the houses, and the Learjet is not a villain at all. On the contrary, he's a hero. Not a good man necessarily, that depends on the individual, but his personal wealth is just a small percentage of the much larger wealth that he has produced, which translates directly into hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of new jobs and valuable products or services that wouldn't exist otherwise. Now, back in 1862, during the Civil War, the U.S. federal budget was about $530 million. In 2010, that number was $3.55 trillion. That's $3,550 billion. It's about 7,000 times more. Now, does that mean, in very general terms, just as a milestone, that there is 7,000 times as much wealth in America today as there was back in 1862? Yeah, it absolutely means that. The population of America today is only about 10 times what it was then, but the country is unimaginably wealthier. In 1862, the city that I live in, Los Angeles, looked like this. This was downtown Los Angeles, right around the time that the U.S. federal budget was $500 million. Today, Los Angeles looks like this. Now, if wealth is limited, where did all this stuff come from? All of the shops, the restaurants, the 7-Elevens, and the endless rows of houses, each with automobiles, air conditioning, widescreen TVs, Xbox 360s, and all the rest. Where did the money, the excess wealth, come from to turn Los Angeles from a couple of huts into this? Oh, and by the way, this is a place where the poorest people have things that the richest people in 1862 never had or could have dreamed of buying. Things like antibiotics, electricity, cell phones, and 1,000 other common everyday miracles. Where did all of this spectacular increase in wealth come from? What caused it? Well, it was 3 things. Let's say that one day you sat down with a pen and paper and you wrote a hit song. Or maybe you're an architect and you drew floor plans for a new office building. Or maybe you patented the light bulb or the transistor or any of the rest. You created something in your head that wasn't there before, something that had value, which simply means that other people wanted it and were ready to turn over some of their extra money, their extra work tokens, in exchange for it. Now, you see this? This is an iPhone. This iPhone costs more than an abacus because it does everything that an abacus could do 1,000 times more quickly and easily, and it does a bunch of really cool stuff that an abacus can never do. We're now able to produce and to own things like iPhones because thousands, actually it's probably millions, of individual people had the mental creativity to make each one of the technologies and components that lets the iPhone do what it does. The raw materials, the plastic and the metal that goes into making this iPhone cost just a few pennies, but the idea, the essence of this iPhone is worth much, much more. But what about work that doesn't involve any creativity or inventiveness at all? Does that actually create wealth? Yes, it does. I was an office temp when I first got to LA, and one day I was led way in the back, past the cubicles, to a desk facing a cinder block wall. And there, I had to take one massive printout of customer names and compare them to an identical massive printout of checks issued, and to mark them off one by one to confirm that these people had gotten those checks. What had I done that was worth my $7.50 an hour? Well, I'd made that insurance company just a little bit wealthier. By confirming those check mailings, I was reducing loss of customers due to frustration and error. I was reducing the amount of time that higher level, more valuable employees needed to spend undoing the damage caused by unsent checks and all the rest. What I had done was I had added just a little to the complexity of the entire world, and therefore I added a little bit of value because, and this is important, a cross-checked and confirmed list was more valuable than one that wasn't. And of course, they made me just a little bit wealthier too. But even these powerful elements of creativity and complexity fade to insignificance compared to the real engine of wealth creation. Let's say you're a member of a hunting tribe up in the mountains. Your tribe is great at making spears. They're solid, they're straight, and they've got a strong flint spearhead. But you don't get to do much gathering, so your baskets look like old birds' nests. Now, meanwhile, down in the valley is a gatherer tribe. Their baskets are woven tight enough to hold water, but their spears are little better than wobbly sticks. Now, one day, a guy from the hunter tribe meets a guy from the gatherer tribe, and together they agreed to trade one of the hunter's excellent spears for one of the gatherer's top-notch baskets. They both go home, and the question now is, which one of them is wealthier? They both are, and that's the miracle. They both are returning with things that they and their tribe prize more highly than what they gave away simply because they are harder to obtain. They're rarer. But that's just the beginning, you see. The expert spear maker then realizes that if he gets up early and stays up late, he can make more spears than he needs for just himself. And he can trade that extra work for something he considers valuable, a basket, let's say. It motivates him to do more than he needs. The exact same thing is true of the basket weaver. And pretty soon, both of them are employing their idiot sons-in-laws manufacturing spears and baskets. Yes, the guy making and trading the spears gets relatively rich, but the fact is everybody wins. The idiot son-in-law, the guys making the flint spearheads, the entire hunter tribe gets the kind of baskets that they would never have had otherwise, and likewise for the gatherers with their awesome new spears. Now, for our progressive friends who feel that all wealth has to be stolen, yes, the guys with the spears could go out and kill all the gatherers and take all the baskets. And then there'd be no more baskets. Free trade is non-coercive. Both parties only get wealthier when both parties willingly trade what they have for what they want. Now, in a similar vein, some say that America is rich because it stole all of its wealth from the third world. Well, let's blow this silliness away just real quick. U.S. GDP is about $14 trillion. The GDP of a third world country, Djibouti, let's say, is about $1 billion. Now, America has 400 times as many people as Djibouti, but Americans don't just produce 400 times what Djibouti produces. We produce 14,000 times as much as they do. If we sent in the U.S. Marines to take every single thing Djibouti produced in 1 year, just took every single thing, their entire GDP, well, that would power the U.S. economy for 38 minutes of the first hour of the first day of America's GDP year. If we took everything from the bottom 40 countries, it might run the U.S. economy for a day or two. The whole idea is ridiculous, at least to people who know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. My friends, whenever two parties make a free will trade, spices for wool, or grain for firewood, or even $3.50 for a Happy Meal, both sides benefit because the customer would rather have the hamburger and McDonald's would rather have the $3.50. Now, you're welcome to disagree with me, of course. You can email me a comment on why you hate business and corporations using your Apple computer while you sit at Starbucks and send messages down AT&T phone lines to YouTube servers running Hitachi hard drives, all of which is powered by something like Consolidated Edison, most likely generating electricity by burning oil provided by ExxonMobil. Now, if you want to hand deliver a message scratched on a tree bark using a sharp stick while wearing a grass skirt, I will be much more impressed with your moral outrage. Creativity, complexity, and free trade make people wealthy. We conservatives believe that this is the great miracle of a free country and a free people, and that the government is not capable of doing any of this. All that the government can do is regulate, constrict, and take away. Now, some regulations are good and appropriate, and some tax dollars are necessary, but every time we put the miracle of wealth creation in back of, rather than in front of, the government, ruin will surely follow. And that's the way things are heading. So that's why we have a Tea Party. And to keep these messages coming, go to declarationentertainment.com and become a citizen producer just like the rest of the kids on the block. I'm Bill Whittle. We'll see you next time on The Firewall.